Good. It's okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone on the stream. Hope everyone's having a good day. Welcome to the third installment, third or fourth installment of Education with Kerstetter, featuring Ed Kerstetter and Danny Baisden, aka Carbon. Welcome, guys. Hi, how are you? Doing great. Very excited to see this particular track walk because Zandvoort happens to be one of my favorite tracks, and I'm sure there are quite a few other people who are the same way. So without further ado, I will let you guys roll. I think we have everything set up. I'll be monitoring the ones and twos to make sure everything's okay.
To Zandvoort. For those of you who stay up on F1 or other forms of racing, you'll know that the track has changed a little bit, but those changes have not been reflected in ACC. So, unfortunately, no banking in the last set of corners or the one of the hairpins, unfortunately. But we are, like I said, at Zandvoort at the flatter version. And I think last week worked pretty well when we kind of combine corners. So we'll do that again, and we'll get started. We'll get right in there. So again, I'll do sort of an external view, internal view, and then at the end we'll do a full lap. So corner one. Coming into corner one, what you're going to be looking for, it's a heavy braking zone, and what you're going to be looking for on track is this GT sign, if it's there, or the Shell V Power on the left hand side. That's going to be sort of the beginning of your braking point there. In the car itself, it looks a little bit. Yeah, I use this line sometimes as well with a 100 board because it comes up pretty quick. But in reality, you're actually braking sort of much further back, and it's a heavy braking zone here. And this is one of the corners just because of the banking. I don't try to arc it in. I try to really hit as I'm kind of shooting for what to aim for. I try to hit this little piece of. I guess you can't necessarily see it. The little triangle it looks like for the dirt right at that entry. I wish I had like a little highlighter thing that I could do. I aim for sort of clipping that almost as I'm entering, and like I said, super heavy braking zone. You're in full brakes up until kind of the end of that pit road sign coming in. And personally, I try to hug the corner all the way around on the inside. So get woed down, and then hug this corner as much as you can without really getting on the curb at all. And the banking seems to really help turn the car. And then the exit can be a little bit deceiving. It's a little bit easy to get on the throttle too early, and you'll either like really engage the traction control, or you'll just sort of go really wide coming out of here and get into the dirt. So like a lot of the corners, this one takes a little bit of patience, but the more you keep it to the inside on that inside curb, the less patient you sort of have to be, it seems, just because of the banking.
I think
So
if I could add, one of the things that took me a while to get is that to understand that the bankings on this track help a lot with grip, and that sometimes you have to force yourself to go over to really understand where the limit is as you're learning the track. So try braking deeper than you think, to really learn where you can get that extra grip because of the pretty extreme bankings that you get in some of the corners.
yeah, for sure, you can definitely throw it in because of the banking a little bit harder than you would other places, for sure. So I'll run this through full speed external, and then we'll do a full speed internal. And Dan, if you have any insights, go ahead and let loose.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll go back in.
I think the only thing I would caution on that corner, well, in this track and in general, is to be very cautious of the curbs. Um, Even the GT4s, which are known to be okay on curbs, these ones are pretty sharp or steep, and they are not forgiving whatsoever. So just be cautious on the curbs.
Yeah, there's a few curbs here that you can use heavily. This
Mhm.
is not one of them. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
And it's not even like it's too. I think it's because of the banking. Like the curb itself isn't bad, right? If the track wasn't banked, you probably want to use the curb, but because it sort of forms a V in a ditch, you want to get as close as you can to the curb, but definitely not hit it because it's really going to upset the car.
Yeah, and at least in the Camaro, I recall the differential just instantly unlocks and the car falls on its face as soon as you start touching the curb. So, yeah, that's the only reason why I mentioned that.
Gotcha. Oh, good point. So that was turn one. Turn two, what we're coming up to here, it's not the kink, it's the actual right-hander. I'd be careful here if you haven't driven this track in a little while. You used to be able to really ride the curb and throw it in, and I think with the 1.8 update, you can't really do that anymore. The car just wants to spin. I think it's that tram lining or whatever they call it effect that they implemented. And so I try to avoid this curb as much as possible. You can get on it a little bit, but if you're any further up than this, um, it tends to really upset the car. And this corner number two is definitely like a confidence corner. You'll have to, excuse me, play around with it. It's really easy to sort of stab at the brake too hard and over slow. It is sort of you definitely get on the brakes hard initially, but you kind of roll off pretty quick, and you need to get that timing down to where you're not over braking and then not being able to leverage, like Eric said in the beginning, the banking that's on the right hander in order to keep the car sort of stuck on the inside. As far as breaking points go, for me, I don't look anywhere, um, like off to the side of the track. When I brake, for me, this is a feel because you're sort of inside all of the banners. When I'm in the car, I sort of look at, you know, peripherally, I'm looking at the apex, but I'm sort of looking at how much curb I have left, and that's sort of my only reference. But I don't use anything on the sides of the track since it is sort of such a quick corner. You kind of flick it in there, and for me, if I'm looking left or right, I'm gonna lose more time um, than if I just sort of eyeball the breaking point and sort of wish for the best. So you're on the brakes just a little bit, and then off them, and you really want to get as far inside as you can with like a bare, ideally avoiding this curb completely. I think you can get up on it a little bit, but it's hit or miss on what the car will do, so it's hard to anticipate. So get right up there on the curb, and um, we'll cover these corners together here. You want to make sure that you're setting yourself up okay for corner number three. And so you can swing it out wide. I wouldn't use really any of the curb here. And then you sort of don't need to get back completely. I tend to take sort of a middle of the road approach here. I'd like to be a little bit further right than you see me here. And again, just like the right hander, I don't have a breaking point for the left hander that I'm looking anywhere. Looking at the replay, it's like as my back of my car passes the curbing, the red and white curbing on the left hand side, but it's not something that by the time you're in car, you really don't. You're sort of past that curbing, and I don't have a good reference here either. Again, this is like a feel thing for me as I'm coming off, approaching the apex, and then braking as I feel like, hey, I'm this far from the apex itself. But if you're learning the track, you can use that curb sort of initially, and then inch up, be like, okay, split second past the curb, and sort of keep working until you feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, I use those same braking markers. The left-hand curb, as it's ending, you can see tire marks. If it's an optimum track, it'll get a little darker, and that's usually my turn-in point. Um, And then going into this corner, I use the banners and flags on the right-hand side. So I don't know if you've gotten to that point yet or not, but I just thought I'd throw that out there.
No, that's good. That's good. So coming into this corner, this is another one that I like to keep tight. You can sort of double apex it, where you apex early, let it swing out a little bit wide, and then apex late. I do that if I mess up the entry and I'm carrying too much speed. Otherwise, I try to keep it pretty tight. It's a little bit irregular of a curb shape, so you do sort of double apex anyway, because of the irregularity there. But the other way is to sort of pull out like a half car width, or even a car width if you drive it in too deep. Get the car rotated, and then you get a little straighter exit. But ideally, I like to sort of wrap it as much as I can on the inside, real close to the curb. Again, you sort of have banking that and an uphill that sort of help plant the car. And then coming off here, you can use this exit curb. You can go all the way up on it if you need to. And just be careful. This is one of those where if you upset the car coming off, it's easy to spin it. And then that sort of creates a log jam behind you. So let me play this through. And we'll do another one in car. All right, now we're coming up to this next complex of corners 4, 5, and 6, which are basically flat out. In the GT4s, you kind of have to watch this section because I aim to like just clip the curb on the right hand side. If you're a little wide, unlike the GT3s, if you're a little bit wide in the GT4s, it'll actually like throw you out, and then you'll have to either get off the throttle, use this curb, or you're in the grass, which is no fun at all. So it is flat out, but just be careful. If you miss it, you're going to need to have just a little partial lift just to save yourself.
And definitely not on cold tires. Make sure that
Yeah.
your tires are warm, because if you have cold tires in GT4, you are not going to make it flat out.
Yeah, not lap 1, or not the first couple like the tires here warm up pretty quick, but the pressure starts so low. I think I think this is the only time I'm in the 19s for my tire pressures. High 19s.
That sounds about right.
And these things get hot and they build up a ton of pressure, but it takes a few laps to come in, and then it kills the tires. So it'll be a fun race for sure.
It's also important to note that this is very much a rhythm track. It's one of those tracks that one corner will throw you 2, 3, 4 tenths down throughout the sector. First sector itself is very important, and if you're seeing guys that are running half a second lap faster, it's a good chance that they're just nailing the first sector or second sector a little better than you. And it's not to say that like they're significant faster. It's just the rhythm really will hurt you, or it will benefit you if you can get it down. So Zandvoort is a very tricky track.
Yeah, that is so true. So coming into corner number 7, I use the curbing as it ends on the left as a braking point. This is a very tricky corner because you can carry a lot of speed in, but you have to hit it right. And if you're off just a little bit, it really kills your corner speed. So I'm always a little bit conservative here until I build up that rhythm where I just inch a little bit more and a little bit more and bleed off the brakes a little bit sooner and carry that right amount of momentum through this section. So for the braking point, I'm using, like in car, you can kind of see as soon as that curb ends is when I'm on the brakes. And then there's a little dance, at least that I do, for the brake and the throttle until I really gain that confidence, just to get the car woke down, because it's sort of a you kind of arc it in. You can use the banking a little bit, and then there's a little bit of coasting, right? If you hit it right, you're just waiting and waiting, letting the car slow down naturally. And then once you get to a certain point in the corner, you can kind of floor it, and the banking helps keep you. And if you hit it right, it's a really sweet corner. If you hit it wrong, you're losing a ton of time. So coming into here, it is heavy braking until you get kind of over the crest of the hill and down into the gully a little bit, and then you kind of release, and you see me playing with the brake and the throttle, trying to get it to where I can get full throttle, keeping it close to the inside here, not on the curb, but really close, and then letting it unwind. And you can use, I was a little conservative through here. I probably lost about a tenth or a tenth and a half. You can use this runoff area on the left-hand side because you have enough time to get back over to the left for the next corner, which is corner number 8. Let me play this through. And again, really trying to hug that inside curb. And let me play it through from in car. I mean, sort of fighting that wheel, trying to keep it inside. I carried a little, I think the right amount of speed in, but I was a little too hesitant to get back onto the throttle as quickly as I should have. All right, so going into corner number 8, we'll cover, let's see, we'll cover this one separate. Oh, you know what, I wanted to say one other thing. Coming up this hill for 7, you want to widen your entry as much as possible, but it is very easy to drop a wheel on the dirt because there's no curb here. And so, I got, I don't know, not a ton of room, but well, that's the ambulance. There's a little bit of space to the left of that white line, but I play it just a tiny little bit safer. I try not going over that white line, or else you're kind of in like a danger zone there. So just be careful being too wide on entry.
I did want to add one more thing if you go back just a sec.
Yeah.
A little bit farther back. Okay, play it here until you get onto the curbing and stop here. So that's perfect. So I played around with this a little bit and trying to cut the corner a little bit so I wouldn't wash out as much. But I found that the curbing actually throws you farther off because it unsettles the car. So for whatever car you're driving, try to find a balance of what's the best place to take this corner so you set yourself up best for the next one. So I found this obviously here. This is probably just about the right amount. Cutting it further in doesn't seem to help you out more. It seems to unsettle the car more and throw you out even further.
Yeah, I think I aim to just not get on the grass. And that doesn't, if we play it full here, at least in this car, it doesn't upset the car. There's a little bump, but there's nothing crazy going on there. But good point. Try not to, don't overdo it.
It is. This is one of those corners you can use that inside curb to rotate the car if you need to. Some cars handle it different than others, so you do it in practice, not in the race.
That's interesting because I have to try that because I've never really tried using that curb on the inside.
Yeah, it gives the car a little bit more rotation, so you don't run wide at the exit. Lets you get on the throttle a little earlier.
Good tip.
Are you talking about the previous corner or the one we're about to go into?
The previous corner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Using that curbing on the inside.
Okay.
So coming into 8, you have a really good reference point, which is the line here, or the bridge. And so that is where I start braking in the car. It looks like it feels like you're past the line, but feel is not real. Heavy on the brakes, and this is a corner where you want to get slowed down a little bit sooner, get the car pointed, because you can really use the inside curbing. So one of the few places here where you can use the curbing to your advantage heavily. So I try to get the car slowed down. Another rhythm section for sure, because it's easy to go too hard or not hard enough. And once the car rotates, you can get back on pretty easy. I use just a little bit of throttle to control the rotation, and then you can really hit this curb pretty hard. You can even go up on this red and white. I think I was a little bit conservative, but again, another confidence corner where you have to build that up, and then really use the exit to your advantage. So, again, I was conservative through there, probably another tenth and a half or so. You can really go really wide and use that red and white curbing even if you need to get yourself set up for corner number 9. So I'll keep doing that. Gotta move my keyboard a little bit closer. So we'll do in-car. And then the other thing too is a lot of people will, me included, will clip this grass. It just sort of helps you brake in a straight line, so you're not trying to like brake while using some of this track which sort of jets to the left after the sign. So if you use a little bit of that grass, it sort of straightens your braking out while still being able to use a lot of the track. But another warning to like not be too aggressive here. Obviously, there's speed by widening the corner a little bit, but pretty big downside if you're still in the grass at this point when you're heavy braking. Cool. So next corner is corner number 9. This one, it's one of the few times I actually look way off to the left or right of the track. I use this sign on the right-hand side as a reference point to when to start braking. Sort of as it passes my peripheral vision is when I start. The other one is when it starts getting optimal, you'll see sort of a heavy line of rubber start on corner entry, and it's sort of like right as that heavy rubbered in part of the track starts coming in is when you want to be on the brakes.
It's hard to see. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
But if you're in the cockpit view, you can also see like a green light, like an indication light right there at the apex. So that could be another marker too.
On the right-hand side?
But
there you go.
it is tough to see. So I don't know if it would be ideal. Maybe I just keep my mouth shut.
Oh, I didn't even know there was a light there. That's interesting. In this corner, there's a couple ways to do this corner. Kind of throw it in a little hard and then let it wash out and use all this corner on exit. Or you can kind of do what I did and like be a little conservative on entry and then really cut it hard at apex. I find that like a lot of people end up going wide, and you can use this tighter line as they're kind of slipping and sliding as their tires wear off. For me, it helps save the tires a little bit because you're not, just fighting oversteer that whole time, and allows me to get a run on somebody. Now, we'll cover these two corners together because they kind of flow together. Because if the person's setting it out completely wide here, they're going to be fighting to get back to the right. Whereas if you're a little more conservative and come off a little bit straighter or tighter on that corner, you have the ability to have a better entry into this next corner, which is 10, which then allows like. For me, it's hard to brake when you're way inside. You have really no reference. When you're outside, you have a few more references, and you can usually carry a little bit more speed on the outside and make a pass. One of the few passing points for this track. Let me play this through. Definitely a heavy braking zone. And then fight to get back to the right for this corner. And we'll go in car, do the same thing. You can use that curb a little bit. And then for this next corner here, I use the orange by where this Marshall is. As soon as that sort of passes peripheral vision, it's another one where when the track starts going optimal, you have sort of rubbered in section 2. But I use that as a braking point coming into corner number 10. And this is a really tricky corner here because the car really wants to slide. As you can see, I got in a little too deep, and the back end wanted to come out, so I had to correct it. And then that actually enabled me to get a pretty decent exit, but I lost a little bit of time throughout the corner. And it's important for a good exit because it's, I think, the second longest straightaway that's actually straight in the game. So it's another passing opportunity if someone messes up, or on the track, if someone messes up their exit. And I try to avoid arcing it in because it is a long corner. And if you arc it in, you're still kind of waiting and you just lost a bunch of trail braking opportunity, and you covered more ground than the inside than if you're just coming to the inside. So I try to take a little bit tighter of a line in and then just be a little patient, let it rotate. You can use the curb on the inside too. And then you can really use all the curb on exit and even up onto the rumble strip and the Grasscrete, I think is what the official name is now for
Yeah,
it.
the
So
Grasscrete.
the Grasscrete. I'll play that through here full speed. I'm gonna go in
Yeah,
car as well.
I would avoid going too wide on that curb though. If you get tires up and over them, they will pull you to the right, and there is a barrier that shoots out from the right hand side as well. So it would be a very bad day if you catch that. Be conservative on the exit. You don't really want to run over the curbs too much. That's something that I had to learn the hard way.
Cool. So coming up to last couple sets of corners. You have a long straightaway. There is a passing opportunity here, but you really want to make sure you're along somebody. If you're on the inside, you're alongside them a pretty decent way if you're going to make a pass into the next two sets of corners here, 11 and 12. Coming in here, I use the I brake at the 100, but I use distance to the start of the red and white curb as my beginning braking point. If we go in car and look at it, and you also have that line as well that as you cross over to it, it's sort of right between the line and it's at the 100. But again, I don't like looking too far left that I don't have to. So I use the red and white curbing. But either of those will work depending on the car and your preference. This is a heavy braking zone. I try to use the curb on the left a little bit as I'm slowing down. And then this is another one of those where you can really abuse the curbing. And so I don't know if there's a track cut here. I don't think so. I don't, at least I don't think I've gone so far where it did a track cut. But I think if you go too far, you'll know because the car will just bounce sort of uncontrollably, even in the GT4s. But you can really use a lot of this curb. It helps rotate the car a little bit. What I find tricky is I tend to overslow that section a little bit, and then I have to like stab at the gas, as you can see here, because I'm not going in fast enough. And so that's something I fight all the time, where I try to I overslow, where I can carry a little bit more speed as long as I have that rhythm down. And then that sets you up for the left-hander, which is corner number 12. And this one, you can use a lot of the red and white. You can actually go up on the yellow, but it upsets the curb a little bit. So I like to try to keep it relatively on the red and white curb only. And then this is one where you can kind of go a little bit deeper than you think you can. And it's a quick corner. And so like if you nail it right, it doesn't feel like you're off the throttle for very long. And then the banking helps keep the car in check. And so you can get on the throttle sooner, and it keeps everything in line. You can use all this exit curb, even the Grasscrete on the right-hand side if you need it. It is a little bumpy though, and you want to make sure you get back over prior to the curb ending, or else you'll be in for a little bit of a ride. I'll play this both through full. I'll go in car 2. I'll back it up. And it is very easy. You can kind of hear the traction control kicking in. It is very easy for the rear to step out on this corner exit here, especially as the tires wear. And this could be another decent opportunity if someone gets a little squirrely through either of these sections to really get up on them. It's tough to make a pass, though. You really need for them to mess up a decent amount for you to be able to get a run before the last set of corners. Yeah, I don't know, Danny. Do you take that any different? I've seen people take that a ton of different ways. I always found that tight was better, but
There's a number of different ways you can do it. You can double apex it, meaning that you take a shallow line in, swing out, and then cut back in and try to take a second apex to extend your to capitalize on the short little straight that you have there. I've seen more people do that when they have someone in front of them to get a run into the next corner. I typically will keep it narrow, but I think it just all depends on the situation. This track is so hard to pass on in general, so you really have to set the person up in front of you 2, 3, 4 corners ahead of your move, because um, you really do get a narrow window of an opportunity. So that might be a good option, is to double apex this corner to get a little bit of a run. But I don't really see a huge advantage from either way. So you can't go wrong.
experiment it yourself and see what works better for you. All right, cool. So getting into the last set of corners, this would be corners number. Let's see if they're still accurate here. 13 and 14. And so this is kind of a fun set of corners. In the GT3s, it's almost the first one's not flat out, but the second corner is pretty much always flat out. And the GT4s, you're almost always going to lift. I don't think I've driven a car here where in race conditions you didn't have to lift on the second part of this corner. So we'll show it here. Braking point, not a great reference. There's the marker on the left-hand side at the 50, I want to say, which is probably your best bet. So like kind of right at the 50, but again, it's sort of in the car, it's sort of long gone at this point. You do have the orange end of the rail system here on the right that you could use as well. And it's not a heavy braking zone. It's a sort of a dab at the brakes. And then for what you're looking for, like I go back and forth. I try to straddle the curb like this sometimes, or it all depends on how I get in there. So if I'm a little bit shallow and I want to try to get a good run off, I'll tend to use the curb a little bit more. If I nail it right, I'll use the curb a little bit, but I won't try to go up on the gray stuff. And so it really depends. You do want to widen your entry a lot, and it is easy to go a little bit too far off on the left and get in the grass, which then really it's bumpy and it really messes your entry up. But for me, using that inside curbing tends to help rotate the car, and then the GT4s, that's a very good thing. So I would experiment here on how much curb you use and what you like. The goal here, though, is to get off. I had to lift just slightly. The goal here is to get and use all of this curbing here on the left, and then some sometimes, to get a really wide entry in the next corner. So you're up wide here. I was in the grass or in the dirt just a little bit. You can see the dirt got kicked up. It doesn't really impact your time all that much, and so you get like this, a half tire with over, and you're still okay. And then the goal here is to ride that until you get right to this turn-in point here, where the grasscrete ends, and you sort of want to just run over that just a tiny little bit, or I guess avoid the grass, but like almost clip the corner, and that gets you the widest entry you can into corner 14. And here, maybe in qualifying, you can get by if you nail it and you have a little oversteery of a setup. But for me, it's the tiniest little bit of a lift, and then you just do a little bit of maintenance to make sure you're not going too far over this red and white curbing. This grass screen on the outside tends to come a little bit too late than you need it, and so you know, it's a little bit further up there. So in the GT4s at least, you know, too little, too late, I guess. But the goal here is to be, flat out or just a slight lift as if you're in race trim, flat out in qualifying, small lift in race trim, uh, or else the person behind you, if you have to lift late, the person behind you is going to get a run coming off the corner, and they'll have a run on you for probably the best passing opportunity on the track, which is entering corner one. If you hit this right, like I try to be, if someone's close behind me, they're going to get by you if you have to lift, right? If they're on your butt. And so I try to be a little conservative here because there's tends to be a lot of aero push if you're the car behind you. If for the car behind you, to where they really have to lift, and it's very hard if you hit the corner. Okay, you don't have to hit it perfect, and you keep more momentum up. It's very hard for that person then to make a pass on you because they have so much less front downforce that they have to lift more, and then the straightaway is long, but it's not long enough to sort of recover, unless maybe you're in the BMW, or I guess or the McLaren, which is pretty fast in a straight line as well. So my advice would be, if you're battling somebody, don't push it too hard. If anything, go a little bit conservative, and they're going to have a hard time passing you if you do that. We'll run through this full. Danny, I'm curious how much of the curb you take here, if any.
Through this corner right now?
Yeah.
As much as I possibly can get away with.
I gotcha. I know you can use that inside curb there a little bit too on the second part, corner 14. I didn't here. I try to get as close to it as I can because it seems like the closer you get, the less you have to lift. Again, I think it's just using the banking. But I have seen some people just get up on the curb a little bit just to help the car rotate.
Yeah.
And maybe in queue, like prevent the lift from happening.
Very much so in the Camaro. I had to do that. In the McLaren or some of the more nimble cars, I'm not sure if it's going to be ideal to use the curb or not. I guess it really just depends on how you have your car set up overall. So again, a practice before race type of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I'll run this through full here. Your best bet coming out of here is either for passing is someone has to lift because they're going to hit the tire barrier in the outside there, or the other option, the other way is it's timed right and that person goes too wide, missed it, in this dirt, right? And then they're compromised, and then you have the ability, like you're far enough back where you don't have to lift all that much, and then you're able to carry your momentum while they're still coming up to speed, and you can make a pass. So, Zandvoort to me is like a pressure track where it's very rare to get around somebody if they're not making a mistake. You really have to have a pretty big pace advantage to do that. And so my goal, if I'm trying to really get around somebody, is to force them into a mistake by either being on their butt and they overdrive something, or there's a couple places where you can kind of do some fake moves, like into the into some of the chicanes, to where you kind of peek your nose out and they check their mirror, and then because it's such a rhythm track, they're discombobulated for a second or two and mess up the entry or exit to where you can kind of sneak by. But this is probably one of the tougher tracks on the schedule from a passing opportunity perspective. So, and then let me play this in car just to get that. right? And then that's a lap at Zandvoort, and I always found it funny that like there's like pictures of the corners at every before every corner, so in case you're drunk or forget where you're at, just check these signs, and you'll at least know which way to turn the wheel when you get there.
I
The
never noticed that.
extreme detail information that you get from these detailed track walks, I never noticed it too, so that's pretty cool.
And then there's also the sign for pit lane. I don't know if the race is this race a endurance, or is this
No.
a 15 15 15? Okay,
15s,
so no pits.
yeah. Nope.
This is one of the harder pit entries.
Yeah.
Here. So I was gonna say practice pit entry, but with the
Yeah.
15 15 15 you don't have to.
It
But
comes
if you're
up
ever
on
racing
you.
Here,
It,
oh yeah, it's so easy just to like pancake the car.
Yeah, it comes up on you really quick, and it's kind of, because you're trying to carry so much speed out of the exit, it's hard to get over. But also, the restrictor, I think, is pretty close to the entry, so you have to be very conscious about where that is to not speed in the pit lane.
Yep.
Yeah, the pit lane is going to be is a pain in the butt at this track for sure.
All right, cool. Let me play this through full speed, and then I'll do one external, and then we can open up for questions. flying lap around Zandvoort, I think. I think I was a 144.8 and waiting for it to pop up. Yeah, was race fuel, so I think probably like high 143s probably for Q would be um, in the works.
Yeah, for
depending
sure. I
on the
think
weather.
43s is a excellent target, um, unless you're in the Porsche.
Yeah, right. Oh, your name's Tortellini.
You know,
Cool.
I always wonder uh, what the just out of curiosity, what our levels are relative to like the tortellinis out there. So I've been trying to find my own like daisy chain or a chain of like I know this person who raced against this person who raced against this person who raced against me, so I know that there's this many factors faster than me, and I'd say it's pretty fair to say Tortellini is probably one of the fastest out there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Him,
Tortellini,
Carrier, um,
yeah, all of them. A lot of the EU have crazy fast drivers. That's where you're going to see the likes of Mills Nijaks. You'll see Jordan Sherritt, Jardier, Dalking. I'm Samir Foch, Yukog Boothby or George Boothby. I mean, all of the UK and EU have some really incredible drivers, and in terms of pace, they are like for example, Spa. Boothby holds the record right now for the 2:15.5 or 2:15.6 right now at Spa. Um, Misano is the track that people are running low 32s, so like 32.2, 32.3. Zandvoort, I think there was some drivers like Black Goldsaw who were doing high to low or high to mid 33s in some of the GT3 cars. So um, they're certainly fast. Um, and 42.5, 42.2 is what they were doing in the GT4s. So I am down, Eric.
Sorry, the dog.
down, Danny.
Yeah.
I am
I thought
down.
I was
No.
muted. Sorry, the dog's just ran into the room and acting all crazy. I think he wants to be let out. But yeah, Beachley, I think you're targeting 2 to 3 seconds off of these guys, and I'm targeting 2 to 3 seconds off of you, given the crazy improvement you've had this season, which is awesome to see. Um, I don't. It doesn't look like anyone has any questions out there. Maybe I'll pose the question one more time, and my dog will do so as well. But any questions from chat out there? We just ran through a detailed walkthrough of Zandvoort and the GT4 with Ed Kerstetter and Danny Baisden, aka Carbon. Really good information. Again, I was very excited about this one, along with all the other ones, because I do particularly like this track. I guess one of the things I did want to add is just in my more amateur experience, Zandvoort was one of those tracks that I hated and I hated and I hated and I hated, and then I put a good lap together and then I loved it. I think you guys mentioned it's such a flowy and flowy track, and it's a confidence track, and it does take a while to get into that rhythm and get that confidence in the banking, I'd say. And once you figure that portion out, at least enough where you can start building up more speed through those banked corners, it just becomes such a lovely combination of corners that you could take. So it's quickly become from one of my least favorite to one of my most favorite tracks. Just by means of figuring it out.
It's also a very fun track in the Porsche Cup cars.
Yeah, it is. It really is. The Porsche Cups are such an underrated car.
Yeah, like if you're, I ran I think it was Smokey's Garage. I think it was with Hutch. I think Coasty was there too. It was a mini season with the Porsche Cup, and it really makes. I think it actually helped because those things don't have traction control, and so it kind of really helps you feel like when traction control is hurting and like when it can help. Um, and one of the races was here, and I think I got way better after driving the Porsche Cup around here for 45 minutes or however long that race was. But those are a blast. If you haven't played around with the Porsche Cup, like find a little league that like does a few races. It's hard to find them where they do like a full season or something with them, but they're just a lot of fun to drive.
So it's actually,
Yeah, they're
sorry, Danny. It's really funny you say that because last season we ran a Porsche Cup League on Saturday night, and just to keep it simple, we mirrored the GT3 League track set. Um, Unfortunately, we just our community is growing and we have a really solid base, but didn't seem like there was a lot of interest in the Porsche Cup at the time. But hopefully, as we keep growing, we can get another thing going here.
yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure.
So talking about leagues, I'll take this opportunity to promote what we got going on this season and moving forward. We do have the GT4 Championship for which you witnessed the track walk for. Next race is at Zandvoort coming on Thursday, and then following that we do have our GT3 Championship, which is on Sundays, and our next race is at Brands Hatch. And you can, if someone wants to join, we're open to people joining in the middle of the season, and we'll kind of ask for a quality lap from you at Kyalami, which is where we qualified this season, and have people placed in the right division. And then moving forward from there, we have our endurance race coming up in the second Saturday from today, our endurance championship with 949. Great bunch of guys over there. So if anyone's interested in a 2-hour, 40-minute solo endurance, which is really fun, around Hungaroring on February 12th. And then finally, the iRacing with 949, which we do on Tuesdays just before our track walks. So I know both of you guys partake in that. It sounds like an extremely fun series, and wish I had the time to join as well. But really good wheel-to-wheel action there. We do have a question from Reg44 Reg. I think that's Reg King. Do you guys have issues with roasting the front left on this track?
You roast both left side tires on this track.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had brake duct 6 and 6 in the GT4s, and it's just a very hard track. I guess it's a very abrasive track. And I always do testing at 24:30, like the fixed qualification weather. And this track, I think, has the hottest tires of anything at, if we're talking like for weather. So very very tough track on tires. We'll have to manage a lot of heat, and that's one of the things that made the Porsche Cup so interesting. Because without traction control, I mean, the tires are just on fire. The rears, and I guess that brings up a decent point too. Like, this is not a bad track to increase the ABS and increase the traction control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to try to keep the heat down and manage the heat a little bit.
That's a great question.
The other thing too is a very good question is play with your brake bias. So if you shift your brake bias rearward, as long as it's not too far where the car is unstable, you can shift that heat from the front to the back too. The more rearward you go, it's not going to be a ton, but you could probably shift it 3 or 4 degrees depending on how far back you go. But don't do it where it jeopardizes your lap time, especially with those short races. But it's another tool you can have in the cockpit.
So I had another question. Maxing out camber for a 15-minute race, is it short enough where you could possibly do that, or is the brutal leftness or rightness of this track maybe too much for that?
Danny, why don't you cover that one? You're better with setups.
Oh boy. Well, it depends. And I only say that because you really have to understand what your tire wear looks like after a few laps before you can get a good estimate. But if we're talking like 30-minute race that we're going to be doing this coming Thursday, um, a a tire will definitely last. A couple things that you want to keep notice of are your temperatures from outer to inner. If they are significantly separated by 4 degrees or more, let's say 5 degrees or more, then you're going to be using the inside of the tire way more than you're using the outside of the tire. And this track is one that you want to kind of disperse that temperature evenly across the tire to help keep the temps down. GT4s use more camber though, because they have softer suspension, they have more body roll. As the car leans over, you're going to be using more camber on the tire. So it really comes down to feel. However, to summarize it, and a too long didn't read, most cars you can get away with running max camber over a 30-minute period. You're going to start seeing more issues when you're looking at a 60-minute race or something like that.
So Danny, actually, just a quick correction. The reason why I asked explicitly is because we're running 15s for this weekend, or this.
Oh,
this
I
race.
apologize.
Yeah. So if you feel like it might be okay for 30s, is it fair to assume that yeah, maybe, because it's almost not a gnarly, given that we have splits now, but a regular qualifying session, you could be out for 5 to 10 minutes, me being slower and taking multiple laps. But that's where I was curious if it was a good idea to max out the camber and give her.
Yeah, I mean, it does not hurt to try. You're not gonna wear out the tire within 15 minutes. Most qualifying sessions are about 15 minutes anyway, and sometimes you can run your fast lap at the end of that. So, yeah, give it a try. It doesn't hurt. One thing that you might notice is that you start having too much grip in the rear end, and the car will understeer. So, if that's the case, you need to take some camber out. Just to make it through some of those really fast right-handers, such as the last corner onto the straight. And I can't remember for the life of me what we did in the Camaro, but I know that was one of the struggles that we had with that car. Was either too much camber or too little. So play around with it a little bit, but 15 minutes you should be fine.
So
I've blanked all Camaro memories from my brain.
Just erased it.
And I needed to make room for it. But one thing too, that while we're talking about temperatures and Danny, I thought it was interesting last week at Sunday night at Donington. So Danny and I run basically the same setup, and its driving style has so much to do with it though. The example, as I'm elongating this unnecessarily, like even though we run the same setup, Danny needed to run 0.3 psi lower than me on all 4 tires, yes. Even though we were running like pretty similar lap times. It really is interesting just how much driver inputs and just driving style impacts tire wear, tire pressure, tire temperatures. So, just because you got a setup from somebody, and they're running, this slightly different driving style could change. Again, the big one would be tire pressures, hence, and then also tire temperatures. But it's just kind of an interesting point where it's not just setup. You can do stuff driving style wise, or just naturally, right? It's one of the hardest things to change is anything driving style. Right, because it's so like ingrained, it's all muscle memory. I couldn't drive the car as hard as Danny did to enable me to run the same tire pressure. So instead of doing that and trying to reinvent the wheel, I just up the tire pressures by 0.3, and we were pretty much equal at that point. So just kind of interesting how the physics and how the programming goes into the game and what that means.
Yeah, and I do wanna touch on that point, and this is one of the things that I love about talking to Danny about setups is because he doesn't respond with, "Oh yeah, you should up the pressure or down or do the camber or whatever it is." He goes, "This is what you should be looking for as a resultant in your data for that change to make sense for you, right?" So it's not sorry guys, my dog's being obnoxious here. But it's more of a the things you should be looking for as a resultant of your change, which is ultimately what you want to do, given that everybody has a different driving style, and looking at damper differences between me and someone else in the same setup. Everybody, you have to treat that differently with the different changes in how people drive around track. So just keep that in mind, is that even though we talked about the higher camber, the main point that was said was look at your tire temperature distribution, the IMO that pops up in the in ACC that you could look at, or even in Motec. So that's where you really learn whether the change that you've made in the extremity of the camber is correct or incorrect for your driving style, for your car, and for the race that you are doing, which could be different for everyone.
Absolutely. I try to give that information because driving styles are so different. Just like Ed mentioned, like he has to run higher temperature or higher pressure than I do, because he's probably driving the car a lot more gentle, and tires are going to last longer. But you try to give the information that's going to help you create the setup, not necessarily give you the magic solution that's going to make you, I don't know, 500 tenths faster, because that's not how it works. You have to understand the changes that you're making. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to make those changes again. So, um, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people will just go, "Hey, give me your setup," and yeah, that's fine. That only gets you satisfied for one race, and then what are you going to do? So for those who do want to learn setups or want to learn more about them or have any questions about them, I'm not pro at this at all, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. So.
Yeah, and for those that are interested, you could go to the Trackalicious Discord, which I think I could do here, and or the Area 52 Discord, which hopefully I've also put in.
Oh man.
Yeah, buddy. We're stepping up our game here, Danny. Working on it, but yeah, feel free to pop in. Danny says he's not a pro, but he's as pro as they get, at least from my perspective. Lots of information. Even as an automotive engineer who knows a thing or two about cars, I get lost in the information that Danny provides, just because he's like 3 layers deeper than where my mind is right now, and I'd love to get there. So definitely a very good resource, and we'll pop in the Baisden big brain blurb here on the screen,
God.
because it truly is very, very good information that you can get from Danny. So definitely visit his Discord, Area 52. He's got a lot of great information on there, and ours as well, if you're looking for some good racing and overall pretty good community as well. So it doesn't seem like we have any other questions out there. So if you guys have a kind of closing statement you want to make, by all means do it, and then we'll hop off here.
I'm not good. Hey, Reds, go ahead.
I was going to say the only thing I have is just come race with us. Yeah, jump in.
A lot of fun.
If you're not in already, that is.
Yeah, definitely. We're welcome to all skill levels, and we do only ask for just being safe on track. And if you're able to manage that, then you're welcome to join us and learn or compete against some of the best. So with that being said, thanks for everyone who's here. Appreciate you guys hopping on and taking this opportunity to learn from 2 of the best in our league, if not in North America. Maybe some challenging positions in the world, but appreciate your guys' time, and hope you guys have a good night for those who are in our time zone, or a good morning and good afternoon for wherever you are in the world. Thank you guys, and have a good day. See you guys.
See ya.
Thanks for joining. See you.